How's it going, everyone? I am Jeremy Alexander, and welcome to another Construct 2 video. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to make Agar.io / Slither.io logic in under 10 events. So I'm really just going to focus on the core logic as to how this works, and then the realm of possibility is pretty much endless. I'm not going to go too much into detail with what you can do with this at the moment, but for right now I think this will be pretty good. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new project. We're going to make a new empty HD landscape project, which is different from anything I've done. I usually don't do linear sampling projects. I usually use point for pixel art, and I'm not using pixel art for this. There's no reason to. That's not how Agar.io and Slither.io are made. So this is what we're going to use. This gives us a 3840 by 2160 layout with a 1920 by 1080 window size. So it's going to be massive, but this will give us a lot of room to work with. So all I need to do is I need to make a new sprite, double click, make a new sprite, load up this kind of circle that I drew. I know it's not a snake from Slither.io, but it is the circle from Agar.io. I kind of just quickly made it in Photoshop. I'm going to call this our object player, and that's all we really need for this demonstration. So what I do want to do is I want to make a tiled background, but what I want to do fast is turn off the transparency for this layer. Let me rename this to our player layer, and let me make a new layer. Put this one at the bottom. Let's just call this background. And let's make a tiled background. Let's make this something like that. So a little Slither.io inspired. I mean, I could put, a little bit of really poorly drawn lines, or why don't I do this? Let's put the hardness to 100. I could do like dice. Yeah. Cool. So this is just going to, I don't know, just a very simple background here. Let me do it like so. And what we are going to do is go to our player, which should be on the player layer. Let's lock this background layer, and before we do that, let's just change the background color. Let's select the middle color here, so not the dots. And now we pretty much have this set up. Let's set unbounded scrolling to yes. And let's go to our player and add its behaviors. So if you haven't noticed, my Windows 10 is still a little bit messed up, but I'm working on fixing it. It's just Windows 10, I guess. But for the most part, I'm happy with Windows 10. I'm going to add the scroll to behavior to our player. I'm going to add the bullet behavior, as that's going to be our motion. And then I'm going to add the bound to layout behavior. So what I want to do now is I want to right click on our player, clone the object type, and call this object food, as I really don't know what it is that the Slither.io really eats. I guess it's food. Did I put that on the wrong layer? I did. Let me make sure that that's on our player layer. And what I'm going to do for the food, since it's the same exact sprite, is I'm going to, first I need to remove these behaviors. I probably should have done that first. That's loud. Then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an effect here. Now you can add whatever effect you want to change the color, but I'm going to add the adjust HSL just to kind of change it a little bit. I'm going to put the hue up to what it is normally, and I'm going to put the saturation and luminosity down to 75 just to kind of tint it a little bit. Then I'm going to make the size of this 64 by 64. Actually, that's way too small. Let's make this 128 by 100. No. 64 by 64 will work. And the reason being is I want to make our player 128, or no, I want to make our player 96 by 96. So there you go. So it's kind of hard to see. It's pretty much the same size as these dots as our food, but that's fine. That'll kind of trick you out a little bit. For our player, I want to put the speed down to 70. And that is all I need to do for that. And now we just have some lines of code to write. Actually, before we do that, let me just quickly add one more thing here. Let's just call this our HUD. Let's give it a scale rate of 0. Let's give it a parallax rate of 0 and 0. And let's add some text to this. Let's make the text white so we can see it. Let's also bump up the font size so we can read it. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, we can probably get away with making this that big. Let's put this right here, and no, let's put this right here. Let's call this text speed. Let's leave it at that for right now. We'll come back and we'll add 2 more when we need to. Okay, so that concludes our little portion of doing the layout. Now let's program in our less than 10 events. To begin programming, let's go to our event sheet and add 2 global variables. The first is going to be our scale rate, and this is just going to be our layout scale. We're going to set that to 2, so it's going to be double the size of the original scale rate, which is 1. The second global variable we're going to make is going to be called our player mass, and we're going to put this to equal 96, which is the size of our player. So technically, I think our player mass could be an instance variable, but for right now, we're going to leave it as a global variable. So what I want to do is I want to make a new event. I want to make an every tick event, and I want to set our player. I want to set the angle. Actually, I want to set the angle toward our mouse.x and our mouse.y. I just remembered, because this is an HD project, it didn't automatically add in our mouse object, so make sure you do that. I'm used to having a retro style project where it's already added for us. So to our player, we're going to set the angle toward position mouse.x and mouse.y. Okay, now that we have that, let's set the size of our player to our player mass. To do this, we're just going to go object player, set size, and then we're going to type in player mass. That way it's 96 by 96. Finally, we're going to say system, set the layout scale. We're going to set the layout scale to our scale rate. Now what we can do is we can also set our text. Let me grab our HUD text here, our text speed. Let's set the text value of that to equal our object player dot bullet dot speed, just so we can get that. Okay, so now that we have this, we are actually kind of combining Slitherio and Agario together. So we're setting our size to 96, which it already is by default. But we need to control this with a global variable or just any variable so we can actually add and subtract from that. And we're also going to set our angle. Now, because we have the bullet behavior, it's automatically going to move. So when we set the angle, it'll move towards the mouse. So let me put the preview browser here to NWJS, and we'll preview it in a second. Let's continue. So what we need to do next, actually, you know what? Yeah, I will preview it. Okay, so I had to hit start on the other layout because of the fact that it wasn't working on Windows 10 monitors. But anyway, here we go. Here's our preview of our layout. For some reason, my background didn't work, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that. But you can see here, because of our bullet speed and because of our mouse setting the angle every single tick, we actually have this working. Our speed is at 70, and that's important because we want to be able to control our speed when we have the ability to speed up. So I'm going to put this over here for now. And what we need to do, first I want to make sure that I can fix that. Let's go to our background here, and maybe that just needs to be no. If you hit control click, it should reload a project that you already had open. These black bars are just the window, so now when I go to the edge of the layout, the dots should disappear, and we should be able to, I'm moving really slowly, but once we get there, there you go. Now we can see that that's the edge of the layout, and now we have no issues there. I mean, the bound to layout kind of gives us a little bit of an issue, but not really. But now we actually have unbounded scrolling, and then those black bars are just the window itself. Did not mean to close out of that, because all you have to do is hit control to reload. Okay, so what we want to do next is we want to actually create our food. Well, I guess that's the best way to call it. You can call it whatever you want, experience or whatnot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say every 0.5 seconds, if the player is on the screen, then I want to create the object. I want to create the object food on layer 1 for our player at 1920 by 1080. So that way, layer 1 is invalid. Oh, layer 1 does not need quotations. That way we're not using the entire layout, but we are using the window size. So it's going to create in between there. And actually what I need to do, not create it at that, I need to create it at random 1920. And you know what? Now that I think about it, that might not actually work out. So we're going to grab our I don't remember this dimensions, 3840 by 2160. We're going to say random a little bit before the edge of that. I don't want this to actually clutter this too much, so let's just say 3000 and then random 2000. So that should be more than enough, and it'll only create it when it's on the screen. Then what I want to make sure that we're doing is we're setting the size, since this is the same player object, we're going to set the size to 64 by 64 for every single food object. Yes, you could make different sizes later on, but for right now that'll work. And when we create this, we're going to move it on the Z to the bottom of the layer. Okay, cool. So let me hit play again, and we should be able to see our food create. Okay, so I hit play. I don't know why, but my recording and my playing, it's getting messed up, so I just had to pause it for a second. But here you go. You can see that every 0.5 seconds it is creating, as long as the player is on screen, it's creating our food. So that's pretty good, pretty simple, and it's working the way we want it to. I'm going to move this over so I don't close out of it. That would be the mistake. And we're going to now need to actually collide with the food. So I'm going to add the event if our player collides with our food. Then what we're going to do is we're going to destroy the food, and we are going to add 1 to our player mass. And this is important because this is how we can grow in size. Since we've already tied it to the size of our player object, now we are going to grow. So now we'll be 97 by 97, and so on and so forth. So that's how we're going to actually destroy the food and count for the food. But how can we actually scale out our level? Since we set our scale rate to equal the layout scale, here's how we can do this. We're going to make a sub event here. So when we collide, we need to check to see what our mass is currently at. If our system compare variable player mass is greater than, because it's greater than 96, because that's our initial size. If it's greater than 96, then we are going to have the system subtract 0.01 from the mass. So, or no, not from the mass, from the scale level. So now every single time we collide with something and we are greater than 96, our scale rate will start going down. So instead of being 2, it'll be, I think 1.9.9 or 1.99. And then it'll keep going down until it hits 1. So if it is less than 96, then we're going to set our scale rate back to 2, just like this. Okay, let me hit Control and play so I can reload it over here, and let's take a look. So now when I go over here, you can see it's going to destroy itself, so we can successfully eat it, and we are getting bigger, plus our layout scale is actually zooming out a little bit. Let me actually minimize this again, and let me put in our text objects over here on our HUD so we can actually identify what's going on. Let me just copy these guys or clone them. Let me make 2 copies of this. Let me make the first one for our scale, so we'll call this text scale. That'll be for our layout. And then let's call this one our text size. That'll be for our mass, because that's all we need to do. Since we've already tied it together, we don't need to compare our player size. So let me see if I can replace this. Replace text speed by hitting R. We're going to replace this with text scale, and we're going to set this to be the player mass. We're going to replace text speed again with text size. Oops, I did that backwards. I knew I did that backwards. We're going to replace the scale with the scale rate, and this is going to be our player mass, just like this, so we can see what is going on. Let's go to our layout and let's hit Control again, since I already have it open. Let me make this bigger, and now you can see our numbers here. So 70 is our speed, 2 is our scale rate, and 96 is the size of our player. So when I go over here, there we go. I went down to 1.99 in the scale rate, and I went up 97 in the size. So let's keep going. And now you can see I'm going to get bigger. And now you can adjust these numbers to however you want. You know, you can make it ginormous if you really want to, or anything that you want. I'm just going to show you the very basic logic behind Slither.io and Agar.io. Both games I've played a lot, and I think what is so addicting about them is how well balanced each game is. I played more Slither.io than I have Agar.io in the past, but it's a really well balanced game. And when you kind of combine the human element of it by having all these players play at the same time, it works out really well. So kind of tweak it to your liking, how you need it. I'm going to add in one more feature here, and that's going to be a simple state engine so we can speed up. That was the whole point of having our player speed. So to do that, it's going to be very simple. And look, we're only at 5 lines of code. We're only going to add 4 more. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add an instance variable to our player. I'm going to call this our player state. I'm going to give it a text value. And I'm going to say this. If we're going to add an event here for our mouse, if the left button is down, so if we're actually holding down the left button and the player mass is greater than 96, then we are going to subtract from the mass. So instead of adding, we're going to subtract. I'm just going to copy this over to save some time here. We're going to subtract 0.01 from the mass. So it's just kind of like you get a little bit more time. Technically, you could do any number you want. If you do 0.5 or 1, it's going to subtract a lot quicker, and it may not look as smooth that you want. But what we want to do here is when we're holding down the button and we're greater than 96, that's when in Slither.io you can kind of speed up and kind of get a speed boost going. So what we want to do here is we want to set a state. That's how we can successfully change the bullet speed. So to do this, we're going to set the value of our state to equal, let's come up with a name. Let's say down for mouse down. I know it's not creative. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to say else not down. Usually I can come up with a better name, but it's late. Okay, so if we're holding down the button and our player mass is greater, so if we collected some food, then we can hold it down and we can start subtracting. So we'll also bump up our speed by setting our player state to down. So now all we have to do is we have to compare our state. So if our player state is equal to down, and let's copy and paste this and say if it's equal to not down. If it's equal to down, let's set our player bullet speed to 350. If it's equal to not down, let's set it to 70, which is what we originally had. So let's go to our layout. Let's hit Control, click. Let's bring it back over here. And now we are not greater than or equal to 96. So when I click, nothing's going to happen. But let me get a few of these guys going. I know this is kind of slow. Okay, so now I'm at 98, and if I click, you can see that my speed bumps up, and now I'm actually subtracting. If you look in the bottom left there, I'm subtracting by 0.01 until I get to 96. So it's efficient because you get more per food, I guess, by subtracting 0.01, so you kind of get more mileage out of it. But it's definitely different from the games. However, it's still the same logic behind it that kind of drives it. And now I can actually, collect these a little bit faster, so you can see the scale rate go down. And you can also change the scale rate however you like. But it's pretty simple. And really, this is 9 lines of code. This is 9 events. So I'm pretty happy with this. Now you can see I'm getting a lot bigger. There are other things that we could be doing. We can make this more like a snake with, a rope style, body parts, which is kind of more intuitive. But other than that, this is pretty much all the logic behind Slither.io and Agar.io. Now you just have to add in the multiplayer and handle for any server lag, etc., and maybe handling in for, player deaths. If you didn't have this state engine, then you wouldn't be able to click and then set your speed back and forth, so that's pretty important. But there you go. And now you're going to stop once you hit 1. Oh, wait. Maybe we didn't stop. Let's just quickly... Oh, is it not that? Is it 10 lines of code? Now I'm going to have to switch it to 10. One quick thing that you want to do, if your scale rate... Let's compare. If your scale rate is equal to 1, then set it to 1. That way we just kind of have it stopping so we can't go to 0. That would be bad. And I hit play, and now everything got ruined. Perfect. Just what I wanted. Okay, but you get the point. Okay, so 10 lines of code. Now I know how to market this video a little bit better. 10 lines of code, and you have your Slither.io, Agar.io clone. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know I've been a little slow on the videos recently, but that's going to change soon. I have some really cool stuff coming out for you guys. in the near future, so be on the lookout for that. If you like this video and you want to see more clones of games, or if you want to see more Slither.io, Agar.io stuff, I know we're going to get into multiplayer eventually. Let me know in the comments what it is you want to see, because I want to make the stuff that you want to see, and I want to get back to doing a lot more tutorials, because that's what I really love to do the most, more so than actually playing the games, although I am going to be releasing those Game Jam videos. I had to redo them because the audio was too low. I'm kind of in transition of reorganizing everything, so bear with me on that, but everything else is good to go. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a thumbs up if you want to see more. Let's try to hit 50 again. I think that was a really cool goal. Let's try to hit 50. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.